Hello, everyone, and welcome to Reading Saved Me, a podcast all about one of the best forms of self care books. Wow, that was really high pitched, right? You can tell how excited I am about this. Anyways, today is Sunday, and I hope that you're able to take some time for self care today. And hopefully that means reading and listening to the show. So let's get started. So, before I start talking about today's book, I just wanted to check in and see how your week is going. I may not know you personally, but I do really care about people, and I'm just hoping that you had a great week. I personally had a crazy week. It's just been very busy, and I've been trying to find ways to kind of manage this and make it less busy and talk about feeling burnt out at work and in other things. So let's hope that that changes soon and becomes a little bit more manageable for me and just a little bit less stressful. Of course, I have turned to books this week for comfort. Today's book is no exception to that. It's one of my favorite comfort books. But it hasn't just been this book. I've also kind of been looking at a lot of self-help books. And I'm really enjoying The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. It's been out for, I think, let me check. I have it right here with me, so I'm going to check to see when it was published. Let's see here. Published in 1992. That's when I was born. So this book has been around since I was born. So 29 years. And I'm really enjoying it so far. Part of Julia Cameron's kind of method for becoming more creative is journaling every morning, 3 pages, three single space pages, and just a stream of consciousness of journaling. And wow, that is really hard for me. I mean, I like to journal and I journal very regularly, but having to just write 3 pages every morning, and you're really not supposed to think about what you're writing. It's just supposed to flow and not worry about the handwriting and just totally go for it. That is definitely challenging for sure. But I think it's been good so far. It's kind of helped me manage some of my stress and burnout this week. So that's been one thing. And then, of course, the other thing is the book that I want to talk about this week. Also, one other thing before I talk about this week's book. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I know I keep saying one more thing, one more thing. But really one more thing. Um, I'm recording this on a Sunday morning, and typically I record it mornings when my fiance is not home, and he is home today from work, and I love him dearly, and he has a bit of a cold. So if you hear sneezing or sniffling in the background, that is my lovely fiance. And I hope you'll bear with me. I don't think it's too bad at all, but I just wanted to let you know in case you heard sniffling that that is him, and he will hopefully feel better. He's enjoying his day off from work, so trying not to bother him too much with my book talk, and I'm, away in another room. But, if you just hear sneezing, that is what it is. Thank you. So, without further delay, I will say that today's book is Voyager by Diana Gabaldon, the third book in the Outlander series. And this book was published in 1994. So I will be discussing spoilers. I'm hoping that um, you have read it or don't mind some spoilers if you're going to listen to this episode. But if you do mind spoilers with the Outlander series, then please come back to this episode when you finish this awesome book. So, okay, now that we've covered that, Voyager. Again, cannot believe that this was published in 1994. It's almost been how many years? 30 years since this was published. Voyager is the 3rd book in the series, and it is quite long. The version I have is, like, the mass market paperback, and it is, like okay, wow, it's over 1,000 pages. And it's, like, small print and, like, a little small book, like a doorstop. It is thick. It is a thick book. I hope you enjoy thick books. I like thick books. Anyways. Um, and it's hard to believe that this book was only 9.99. I mean, I bought it, like, a few years ago, so it's not like I bought this in 1994. It's 9.99 in 2000 and, like, 19 prices, I think is when I bought this. I mean, yeah, I was 2 years old in 1994, so that would be funny if I somehow came into this book at that age. But anyways, I mentioned last week that Dragonfly and Amber is my favorite of the Outlander books, and rereading Voyager in preparation for this episode, I still love Dragonfly and Amber, but now I'm like, or do I like Voyager more? Oh, they're both so good. I think I originally liked Dragonfly and Amber the most because the kind of like the shock factor. Like, you're like, wait, why is Claire back in the future? Like, how is she, how did she end up back here when the last book she ended with Jamie? So that maybe that's kind of what like made me like it so much was like the shock value. Whereas Voyager, I feel like there is so much going on, so much development. I mean, they basically cover what happened in the 20 years that Claire and Jamie are apart. And a lot happened. A lot happened. Um, and by the end of the book, you're like, how did we get here? I mean, I know I'm skipping ahead, but if you've read this, you know that at the end they end up in the colonies. They end up, I think, in Georgia is where they wash up on the beach. It's like, okay, so this book series started off with Claire and Frank on their second honeymoon in Scotland, then Claire going back to 1743, and then meeting Jamie, getting married, going to France, then coming back, and then going through the Stoats again and ending up back in Scotland in 1948, then moving to America in, like, 1948, 1949, giving birth and going to med school, which is amazing, then Frank dying, and then, like, going back to Scotland with Brianna, and then going back to the Stones, and then there's more stuff in Scotland, and then they have to go, like, rescue young Ian in the Caribbean, and then they end up in America. Like, this is epic. This is just an epic story. How did we end up here? So, definitely, recommend reading this if you want something with a sense of adventure. And I feel like this is really kind of a turning point in the series. You know, after this book, it's very focused on their life in America. And this is kind of like a transition, but also like wrapping up like, okay, they were apart for 20 years and then now they're back. So of course, I was so happy when at the end of the last book, we found out that Jamie was still alive. Well, that he didn't die at Culloden. We knew that he didn't die at Culloden. And the beginning of like this book kind of discusses like Roger, Brianna, and Claire's research to try to find out what happened to Jamie after Culloden. I think that like Frank. Okay, so I'm not the biggest Frank fan, and it's funny because my fiance and I have watched the show together, and he is always like, "I feel so bad for Frank. Poor Frank. Poor Frank." And I feel like if you watch the show, you kind of get that impression more. But reading the book, you're kind of like, Frank, look, like Like, Claire is pregnant, and I guess Frank is kind of understanding, but then he kind of, like, has his issues, like the affairs, and I don't know. And then he tries to take Brianna away. So, again, really do love the Outlander series, but wanna flag that there are racist stereotypes in this book that I do not think are acceptable. And just wanted to, let everyone know that if you do decide to read this book, there are some stereotypes. There is some, um, depictions of violence and sexual assault that could be triggering for some people. So, just want to flag that before you decide to possibly read this. Okay, and I did not yet mention that it is not okay that Frank is super racist in this book. Like, what the heck is that about? Frank is so racist. That is not okay. And I can see maybe why people who watch the show have more sympathy for him because they don't really address the racism that he has in the show. But in the book, he is racist. And that is not okay. And I still don't really, I guess I kind of understand why Diana decided to kill him off. Like, I'm not saying he deserved to be killed off, but like, I guess in order for things to happen, in order for Claire to actually start looking into Jamie, because she had promised Frank that she wouldn't. And so Claire and Jamie are apart for 20 years, 2 decades. Can you imagine being apart from your partner who is still alive for 20 years? That's so sad. So part of me wishes that that gap could have been shorter. I know that they kind of had to give Brianna time to like grow up and for to be okay for Claire to go back to the future and kind of leave Brianna on her own. But it's just really sad that they spent all that time alone. And then then again I see because like if Claire would have had to go back to the past, like say she went back in like 17 like 58, I think what was Jamie in prison at that point, or he was either at that estate, as a servant. It just it would have been a hot mess. It probably wouldn't have worked out. And like what she couldn't like take Brianna away from Frank. So I do get that. I kind of wish that she could have at least like looked into like what had happened so that she could have been more prepared when she was able to go back. Like I know she promised Frank that she wouldn't, but part of me is like, well, this is the father of your child, and he knows this is the father of your child. So who can blame you for wanting to know what happened? Wanting to know, you know, okay, he planned to die at the Battle of Culloden. So, you know, like, did he die? And if not, like, what happened? And I don't know, but I guess that could have been tempting for her to want to go back. So we'll see. And yes, as we do see, she does go back to the past. And I have to say that that I like Claire, and I really like her in the first book. I think she is like really good at adapting to being thrown back into the past. Like, I know if I was thrown back into the past, I would probably die within like an hour. Like, she just has like so many like survival skills and like, especially like being a nurse and everything. And then when she goes back to the future and she becomes a doctor, and I really admire that about her. But some of the dialogue that she like has in this book, I'm like, what are you saying? And honestly, I really do admire Diana Gabaldon a lot, but I think that a lot of the dialogue, you can tell that this was written in 1994. Like, it's just really not acceptable. And a lot of the tropes that are used and the racist caricatures of some of the characters are just not okay. It kind of reminds me of when you would watch like an old show And even shows from, like, the early 2000s, and this was written in 1994, so I can really see, that this was written in 1994. So, for example, Gilmore Girls, I really love that show. It's one of my favorites. Watched it as a preteen, loved it. Watching it now, I'm like, "Okay, I still enjoy it," but some of the stuff, I'm like, "That is just not okay." Like, racist, sexist, fat shaming, slut shaming, just not okay. There's one line in this that it's not like the worst thing Claire has said, but it just like rubbed me the wrong way. So, like, Claire is like, I wonder why short men are so often enamored of very tall women. And it's like, okay. And then Claire's like, oh no, sorry. Then Roger's like, something wrong with short men, is there? And then Claire says, "They tend to turn mean if they don't get their way. Like small yapping dogs. Cute and fluffy, but cross them and you're likely to get a nasty nip in the ankle." And then she says, "A short one knows he can't do anything unless you let him, and the knowledge drives him mad, so he's always trying something on just to prove he can." And also, what she says about tall men, with women, Claire amplified, "I've always thought it's because they realize that they don't have anything to prove, when it's perfectly obvious that they can do anything they like, whether you want them to or not. They don't need to try to prove it." I'm sorry, what is that? Like, that is just weird. Okay, then Claire is on her plane back to Scotland, and she starts off with, "The woman next to me probably weighed 300 pounds." Okay, so what, Claire? Like, I'm sorry that not everyone is skinny like you. Like, why are you she does this a lot, she comments on people's weights, and I'm like, "Girl, like, you're fine." Like, a 300-pound person still deserves to be on a plane to wherever they wanna go. I'm sorry if, her hip and thigh and pudgy arm pressed against mine, unpleasantly warm and damp. Get over it, you're on a plane, like, planes are small, like, if you really didn't wanna, you know, have to sit next to anyone, then you should have bought a ticket for first class where they have, like, more room, and then you could be your little rich snobby self up front. Like, why are you so mean, Claire? I don't know, it just seems to me that, like, the older Claire gets in the series, the meaner that she is, and I'm like, I don't know, she wasn't this mean in the first 2 books, I don't think. I could be wrong, maybe I'm just. And then, like, like, one of the first things she does when she gets back to Edinburgh is, ask a lady who looks old how old she is so that Claire can feel better about her own appearance. Like, she's afraid that Jamie won't want her anymore because she's 20 years older, and I'm like, I mean, why is I don't know, I just feel like she's a little shallow, and I get she's concerned, she's nervous, but she kinda, like, feels good about herself, like, "Ooh, I had modern dentists and modern healthcare, not like these people who too bad for them, they are not from the future, so I look good." It's like, "Oh, we get it, Claire, we get it." I don't know, it's just a fascination with looks, it's a little much for me. So, I made a little mistake before. I realized I said that Claire was sitting next to, the woman who she describes as being 300 pounds. I said that she was sitting next to her on her way to Scotland. Actually, she was on her way back to Boston. I cannot keep track because I feel like there's so much back and forth in this book. And okay, also the book is like 1,000 pages. There's obviously a lot of moving parts. I'm not gonna go into every single detail, but it definitely takes a while for her to get back to the past. Um, I think it's like, I don't know, it's at least the first couple hundred pages. And she gets back to the past and things are not perfect. Like, they kind of like, her and JB kind of have a nice reunion, but then you find out he's married to Leary. Okay, Jamie, what the hell? Okay, so another thing, I'm pretty sure in the books, Claire does not tell Jamie that Leary kind of, like, set her up for the witch trial, back in Outlander, and I think you find out later, like, she tells him, and he's like, "I wouldn't have married her if I'd known that." But even still, like, it's just weird that he married her. Like, I don't know. I am upset for Claire here. Okay, but then in the show, he knows, and he marries her. Now that makes less sense. Definitely like Jamie in the book a bit better. And I really feel for Jamie. He went through a lot. Another thing about this being written in 1994, it wasn't okay then, not okay now. Um, So I just want to flag a trigger warning for the next 2 minutes, dealing with issues of rape and sexual assault. So if you'd rather skip that, please forward ahead about 2 minutes. Thank you. What happens to Jamie at the estate? And he's basically blackmailed and he is raped. Let's say that for what it is. Like, he is taken advantage of. Yeah, Geneva, she blackmails Jamie. She says she's gonna, like, basically, like, share information about his family and that, he's a Jacobite, and basically says that she won't if Jamie will have sex with her. And that is rape. And Jamie doesn't really have a choice. He is powerless in this situation. And then, I don't know, that's just it's upsetting, and I think it could have been written differently so as to not have that, like, blurry line going on because, I mean, it is rape, but it's just I think that the way that it's written, it's, like, not explicitly said that, so a lot of people maybe may not realize that it is, so, yeah, don't like that part of the book. And I, you know, again, there's also a lot of problems with this book, and I love the plot. I love a lot of the characters. I love Jamie. But I I'm ready to move on from Outlander. Like, I think that there's just a lot of toxic stuff going on here. And I'm a little ready to leave it behind. But don't get me wrong, still love the books. Like, I remember reading this. Of course, I got it like right after I finished Dragonfly and Amber, and I had to go to New Jersey for a wedding. Actually, my boyfriend, now fiance, he was living up in New Jersey, and I was a few states away, and so there was a wedding we needed to go to in New Jersey, so I had to ride the train up there, and I basically read Voyager the whole train ride. And I remember being, like, sad when my train arrived, like, I was happy to see my fiancé or my boyfriend at the time, but I was also like, "I wanna keep reading this and find out what happens." Like, it really just hooked me, I was so into it. I just wanted to read, like, it was funny, like, I was at this wedding and I was having fun, but I was like, "Ugh, I wonder what's gonna happen in Voyager," 'cause, I still don't know what was gonna happen. I remember being on the train and seeing that Jamie married Leary, and I was like, "Oh my gosh." Anyways, yeah, I mean, it's a, good book, great series. I will say that after this book is when it kind of starts to lose me a bit. Not saying that I don't enjoy them, but Drums of Autumn, I don't know, a little slow. Fiery Cross, the fifth book, oh my gosh, slow. Like, there is, like, I think the first couple hundred pages are devoted to one day. And look, these are obviously my opinions. Like, I'm not like criticizing anyone for if you enjoy that, like, that's fine. But just like to me personally, I find the first three books to be the strongest. And then after that, like, they're good, but I just kind of had trouble getting into it. Maybe I was burnt out on Outlander by that point, and maybe I need to revisit those ones. Maybe I'll enjoy them more now that I'm kind of not like binging like the first three books in like a week. So, that's just kind of how I'm feeling right now. Okay, but in my opinion, the best part of these books, like, from Voyager on, starts with L, ends with Gray. Lord John Gray. I love him so much. Um, I'm sorry, Claire, I kinda wish that Jamie and Lord John Grey would have gotten together. Like, how good would that have been if, like so I know, like, Jamie kisses Lord John Grey, and, like, it's kind of just, like, a friendly kiss and, appreciation, I think, for everything that John is doing for Jamie. Um, but then, like, how funny would it have been if when they run into him in Jamaica, if, if Jamie just, like, is like, actually, I'm in love with Lord John Grey." I mean, I don't know, I just love him, and, like, David Barry, who plays him in the show, is so good, and he's so handsome, and again, like, I don't mean to hate on Claire because, I don't wanna be that person who hates on the main character. I'm not hating on her, but just some of the things that she says and you know, I'm just like, "Okay, maybe you and Jamie aren't meant to be together," and I hope I don't get a lot of hate for this. I mean, I enjoy reading about them as a couple, but I don't know, I kinda wanna see a Lord John Grey and, like, and Jamie. How interesting would that be? That would be so fun. I'm sorry, that would be so fun, but again, this book was written in 1994, so, like, I knew that that wasn't gonna happen. But anyways, I love him, and I enjoyed reading about him. I enjoyed their conversations. I think it's hilarious that Claire meets him and, like, doesn't know who he is, and oh my gosh, and then Jamie didn't tell Claire that he had a son? Like, for the longest time, and there are just so many secrets here. I don't know. There's a it's they're on a little bit of shaky ground here in this book. I guess it gets better. It's kind of they do need couples counseling, I think. I think that Claire and JB would have benefited from some therapy. So yeah. That's all I'm gonna say about that. Anyways, I hope that you've enjoyed listening to this and talking about Voyager. As I said, I am not going to do any more Outlander episodes for a while. This is the end of the Outlander series for a bit. Gonna move on to other books. And again, not because I don't like the series, as I've said, I love the series, but just ready to kind of talk about something new. And again, I don't really love where it goes from this point. I enjoy it, but it's not like I'm not like head over heels for books 4 through 8 like I am for the first 3 books. Um, so yeah, I mean, and oh, also the ninth book is coming out soon, so there'll be a lot to talk about. I don't know how Diana does it. Like, she just is very prolific and it's awesome. Thank you so much for listening to Reading Saved Me. I hope that you have a great week and that you have some time to read this week. Take care, and I'll see you next week.